So I've said it once because it bears repeating. Um, the the aim of this government will be to try and prove that Brexit is a success at any cost. No matter what happens, no matter what catastrophes will happen this year, no matter what businesses end up going bankrupt, no matter how many fishermen end up having to sell off their business because of this Brexit deal. Indeed, there is a constant worry of how many people are going to end up going bankrupt. And as Dominic Raab put, you can't measure the effects of Brexit yet. We've got to wait 10 years. But by then, that'll be too late. We have heard multiple times from pretty much every single British industry there is saying this deal is awful. This is costing us money. This is costing us customers. This is making us less competitive in a market that was fully open to us. And this was all predicted. I keep on throwing my hands up. I don't know what else to do sometimes. I feel like an action figure with like one motion. Maybe I should release that. The bowler hat man action figure. What has Boris Johnson done this time? I doubt that would work, but who knows? So because of this, especially, we are controlled in this country. Well, I say controlled. The right-wing press dominates the newsphere. They control most of the newspapers. They control most of the news outlets in the UK. And yet there's a problem with, quote, freedom of speech. We've even got, GB News, the UK version of Fox News that no one asked for. So we've got that launching soon. So there is going to be absolutely no newspaper, except probably The Guardian, maybe even The Independent, maybe even the Financial Times. Again, we'll have to see how this goes. But as I've said, one day there will be up there my Daily Mail, Daily Express, Telegraph, or saying this isn't the Brexit we voted for. And trust me, it's coming. Because sooner or later, even those right-wing papers are not going to be able to ignore the outcries of all this damage that is being done by their precious Brexit. So, to that turn, we have to look across the pond to CNN of all places to get a more accurate reading of what really is going on in the UK. Something which you will never see in a right-wing newspaper, or any right-wing person seem to admit that Brexit isn't going as well as they like to say it is. So, before we jump into that, please do remember to hit that like and share button. And of course, down below there is a link to my Patreon page and a one-off donation link. And as always, thank you very much to those people who do support me that way. So, on with this. So, like I say, this comes from CNN. The title is, Boris Johnson's government is gaslighting Britain about the realities of Brexit, critics say. So, Andy Trust, who has been exporting fish from Cornwall to Europe, to continental Europe, for over 20 years. However, the past several weeks have given him cause for complaint, shutting down his entire European operation of his fish merchant's Ocean Harvest. The cost of sending fish to Europe has more than trebled. In an industry that operates on very thin profit margins, it could absolutely destroy British fishing, he says. It has been several weeks since the UK completed its departure from the European Union, but Boris Johnson's post-Brexit trade deal came into effect. In that time, British exporters have struggled with the new trade barriers. In some cases, orders have been slowed down by paperwork. In other areas, fresh produce has failed to reach its destination in time, forcing it to be destroyed. All of this is due to a direct result of the UK policy decision to leave the EU's single market and customs union. For companies who built their businesses on unfettered access to that market, these barriers, put up virtually overnight and with very little warning, have had big consequences. And while it could be argued that these companies had years to prepare for Brexit, the post-Brexit trade deal was only agreed on December the 24th and came into force on the 1st of January. Under these circumstances, you'd expect a government to be doing everything in its power to help these struggling businesses. However, critics fear that the Johnson administration has buried its head in the sand. The Prime Minister has called the difficulties no more than teething problems. And as we've said before, these are not teething problems. These are permanent and are going to have a lasting effect on any business that wants to export to Europe. Anyway, it continues. Only some of these issues we are seeing at present could be legitimately described as teething problems, said Adam Marshall, director of the British Chambers of Commerce. Yet, some firms are facing adjustment, but others are seeing their entire business model upended, and their ability to trade successfully is undermined. Last week, Britain's Foreign Secretary, Dominic Raab, said that he understood that some companies were struggling as a result of the sudden change, but that, quote, it would take if they take a 10-year view, the growth opportunities in the future are going to come from emerging and developing economies around the world. Again, this doesn't make sense. That is essentially arguing that these companies should go and invest in markets other than the UK. But Brexit, and indeed the Brexiteer mantra, had always been about trying to get protectionism put on the UK market, and that this was somehow fantastic. But I hear you say, Bowler Hat Man, haven't you been saying that these people are free market fundamentalists? Yes, they are free market fundamentalists. The other thing they don't make is a whole lot of sense when they start to contradict themselves. Trust me, the Brexiteers do contradict themselves, well, like a clock. They may be a broken clock, but, they're chiming every single hour. So, it continues. This isn't, however, much comfort for businesses that export fresh produce, for such as the Scottish fishing industry. For many businesses, trading with the EU now feels like a high-risk, long-odds gamble, he says. James Reiters, the chief executive of Scottish Food and Drink, a lobby group. The trading system is more costly, complex, slower and unreliable. For our European customers, who need guarantees of products like salmon arriving at a certain time, reliability is everything. Far from being teething problems, the slower, less reliable trading systems, Weathers describes, are the consequences of new paperwork on things like customs, proof of the product's origins, and the sanitary standards. In the case of companies that import parts from Europe before exporting a finished product, the correct paperwork is needed at every single stage of the supply chain, leaving British exporters at the mercy of European firms which are also getting their heads around the new complex processes. Even though through the impact of FTAs is usually analysed over a period of time, for a government minister to say that we should look at the impact of this deal in 10 years when people are losing jobs and money is completely tone deaf, especially when you consider that it was done down to the government to provide guidance to allow businesses to prepare, says Anna Jansanka, founder of the Trade and Borders, a consultancy firm which assists exporters and importers across Europe. If the current situation sounds dire, some believe it will get even worse. Withers points out that controls on EU food imports are due to start in April, and that the stockpiles are starting to be depleted. And when Europe's hospital businesses begin to emerge from lockdown, demand for food and drink will pick up. If we can't supply them, our competitors will. Unfortunately for exporters, neither the UK government nor the EU seem in the mood to reopen the deal. After years of painful Brexit negotiations, politically, the government made a decision to prioritise regulatory autonomy over economic integration with the EU, and the trade deal reflects that. It does little to facilitate trade, says Sam Lowe, a senior research fellow at the Centre for European Reform. For the time being, these changes have mostly affected those looking to export goods. However, there is also a major concern at the long-term impact that Johnson's hard Brexit will have on the UK services industry. When we emerge from lockdown and British actors, musicians and people providing professional services start looking at taking jobs in Europe, they will be introduced to a world of visas, work permits and European embassies that they never had to worry about before, Lowe says. One of the biggest fears of a hard Brexit was the impact it would have on the City of London, the world-class financial hub that has been the envy of Europe for decades. While London has not seen the flight of jobs predicted, billions of euros in share traders have switched to Amsterdam from London since the 1st of January. And this doesn't sound like much of an immediate impact, as the work can still be done by staff in London. But if this trend continues, it will undermine Britain's status as the financial capital of Europe and impact future inward investment. It had been known for a long time that financial services were not going to be covered in the trade deal. In some respect, that made life easier for financial firms. Because it's such a heavily regulated sector, there hasn't been too much of disruption or job losses, said Lowe. However, he believes that the impact would come later down the line. If you're looking to easily sell new financial services across Europe in the future, where do you headquarter yourself? Amsterdam or London? And the answer isn't clear-cut as it once was. Many analysis through the initial trade deal would smooth the path to some kind of future pact on financial agreement services. But the UK government being bullish about the merits of its agreement and Brussels making noises about London's businesses, things don't look promising. There might be some closer cooperation, but I doubt it at the moment. What's more concerning is the government's gaslighting. They don't want to admit that there's a problem. They play it down. They say to wait 10 years. Which one is it? It's all fine, or do we need to wait 10 years? And what about the people currently suffering? And what are they supposed to do in that time? Says Arnold Merton, Professor of European Politics at King's College London. Liz Truss, the International Trade Secretary, has refused to answer questions from lawmakers on the concerns about the deal, while the government says it has no plans to publish an impact assessment. That's shocking. Really is. But it shows you they know how bad this deal is, that they themselves don't want to publish an impact assessment. Others are pessimistic about the long term and unsure if the government is unaware or in denial about how bad things could get. It is entirely possible that 10 years from now, the UK will have to pivot to exporting beyond Europe, says Simon Underwood, Professor of Politics at the University of Surrey. My concern is that it will be all part of an overall reduction in trade, meaning a smaller economy and ultimately less jobs. Alistair Campbell, who was the former Prime Minister and Tony Blair's Director of Communication, is far less charitable. It makes my blood boil. I think they're in denial because they cannot handle the consequences of their policies. They are battering some of our greatest industries and trying to distract everyone by picking fights and trying to start culture wars. And this is going to get very uncomfortable. Multiple lawmakers, including those from Johnson's own party, told CNN that they are still receiving many emails for constituents who are facing troubles. However, where initially they sought advice, many are now just expressing their frustrations. They know we can't do anything in a lot of instances. The government's websites are not being very helpful, and they are simply just not getting the help they need, says one lawmaker on the government's payroll. It's difficult. They are angry that people are cancelling orders and that I personally cannot get them a French visa for them, he added. Another government spokesperson said, that it was committed to ensuring that businesses get the support they need to trade effectively with Europe and seize new opportunities as we strike trade deals with the world's fastest growing markets. Again, we always hear that this is the opportunity, but I just want to go back to what that professor said, because that's the interesting point. So this is a university professor saying I just want to go over his thing again. My concern is that this will be as a part of an overall reduction in trade, meaning a smaller economy and ultimately less jobs. That is the best case scenario. That is still going to affect millions of people. That is not good news. So, authorities were operating export helplines, running webinars and offering support from advisors, and the spokesperson said that over £2 million a £2 million fund had help for small businesses to adjust had already been established. But back in Cornwall, Andy Trust doesn't see much hope for the future. The British public will never eat enough fish to make up for lost European business. What have we been saying for years? So for every man at sea, another 20 jobs rely on them on shore. Boris Johnson spouts on about investing millions in the fishing over the next 5 years. In the next 5 years, we might have destroyed the whole industry. So, of course, the UK is the world's 5th largest economy, with many talented people working in the logistics industry. It is entirely possible that the situation could improve. However, for that to happen, Boris Johnson and his cabinet will need to convince their critics that they are really operating in the realms of reality. And as we've said before, Brexit is not based on reality. And even that, I mean, you take the university professor of and then what Alistair Campbell said. You've got less trade and a shrinking economy, meaning less jobs, less investment. Or we've got Alistair Campbell, who is like, they're completely denying reality and that this is going to cause, untold destruction on UK businesses and industries that could just disappear. And all this was forewarned. But, again, even that first, what the professor said, if you go all the way back to some of my first videos where we covered this book, The Great Brexit Swindle, that entire premise was, hey, look, elites are funding the Brexit part, are funding the Leave campaign because they want to make the pie of Britain smaller. Not because it will get them less money, it is because they will actually be able to get a bigger slice of the pie. And as I have said before, the term disaster capitalism could become a word that we are going to become all far too familiar with in the future in this country. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do remember to hit that like and share button. And of course, down below, there's links to my Patreon page and a one-off donation link. And as always, thank you very much to those people who do support me. And we'll see you all next time.